on this episode of Therapy Bites Art Lab.
We are happy to have in the Art Lab today our very own superhero, Ahmard Vital, and we look forward to hearing him talk about the psychology of superhero. You know, the big screen is just full of superheroes that swing through New York, that fly through the skies, that come from foreign lands and foreign dimensions. But we're going to talk today with Ahmard, who is an expert in this area. How can each of us in our own lives be an actual superhero? And that's coming right up.
Welcome to Therapy Bites Art Lab, where Dr. Heath and his special guests share real-life stories of helping and healing, fresh from the actual therapy couch, while taking a bite out of common counseling missteps and misconceptions. And now, here's Heath and the T-Ball team.
And we have in our studio today also our regular psychotherapy superheroes, Bookworm Sarah. Here she is, live in, well, not real time, but real time for us. It'll be real time for you when you're really watching this episode. Our own gamer girl, Heather, and of course our squirrel girl, Debbie. You know, I mean, I kind of stopped because I look at calling Bookworm Sarah, gamer girl Heather, and then, you know, Debbie, I look at you and I, and we're losing our girlish look, you know, or at least I am. You know, I work on my girlish look every day, and I don't know, maybe that ship has sailed. But welcome today. Glad to have you guys. We're going to talk about being a superhero because there's things that are practically available to us, that is available to us in a practical way that we can carry off. But then, I mean, there's none of us that are going to leap tall buildings in a single bound or outrun jet airplanes or lift small or medium-sized planets. I mean, I'm doing good some days to lift my coffee cup or at least lift the dumbbells in my little gym when I do my workout, which I got to do tonight, by the way it's calling my name. But is that really being a superhero? Or is there something much deeper, something much more important? I mean, what do you guys think about when you think of real life superheroes?
I think of helping others, giving of yourself, caring for others.
I think of setting good examples, being someone that you can look up to and kind of like role model-ish.
Kind of going off of what Heather said, just consistency. Being consistent in your relationship so people kind of know what to expect. We're not going to throw a whole lot of curveballs, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's great stuff. Tell us, Ahmard, what are you thinking about how can we each be our superheroes in our own little microcosm of life, would you think?
You know, Doc, and thank you for having me for this session. You know, it's when you think about superheroes, you know, there's always the idea that it's a fictional character, right? They have superhuman powers. You know, you have your Supermans, you have your Batman with all the gadgets. You know, you have the Thor who's supposed to be ascended from on high, quote unquote, so say. You know, you got different types of superheroes, and of course you got your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who's practically a child and nerd journalist, by the way. Spider-Man is on my wall, my favorite comic book hero of all time.
Hey, fantastic. We named our son after Spider-Man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were sitting around on the deck one night when we discovered my wife was pregnant, and we were trying to come up with names. We had a whole list, and I said, "Hey, let's name him after Spider-Man." And it's Spider Meeks. It's really an odd name the kids picked. I'm joking. We named him after Spider-Man Parker, and because we love the phrase. What is it? Now I know Ahmad knows. Do you guys know Spider-Man's slogan?
Oh,
friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
No, the one with Uncle Ben.
With great power comes great responsibility.
With great power must also come great responsibility.
Yep.
And by the way, I'm not really sure about this, but I think he might have gotten that. Stan Lee was quite the philosopher, and Stan Lee, I think, got that from Immanuel Kant. which we have a shirt up on the Shopify store. Can't touch this. Emmanuel can't. Can't touch this. It's the categorical imperative. I should live, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but this is basically the quote. I should live such that others can copy my behavior, and the whole world would be made better because of it. But that's a long segue from Spider-Man. But yeah, my son, we named him after Spider-Man, one of my favorite superheroes from childhood. I have all the Spider-Man comics way back dating to the 70s.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Cool.
They're hidden in a secret location. The Spidey vaults.
Oh, goodness gracious. The drama.
Definitely. But he is a Peter, and that's the reason why Spider-Man has been, one of the iconic figures who's come through time or whatever. And it's like, so many people can relate to him. I know I did early on, obviously, Daily Bugle. I worked for the New Caney Sun newspaper, a little community newspaper. Learned photography along the way. Always been a journalist. And so, I just always loved the idea that like he could just go out and just make things happen, right? And all he wanted to do was just take care of the neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about what a superhero represents, it's a very, very strong sense of altruism, right? They're just the game, the idea, the neighborhood, the good of the people is always bigger than their own self-interest. That's why even when you look at the early Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, Spider-Man 1, he got bit, he's figuring some things out. That was sort of between him and his, best friend's dad. Spider-Man 2, he's fighting against all these different things are happening. But then you saw they threw a curveball in Spider-Man 3 where, he got the black goo mamba type of junk that got on him, and it just turned him into just a selfish and just it's all about me. I'm not worried about taking care of the community. I'm worried about letting you know how much I despise you and what you do. Not just enough to get them arrested and locked up. I'm trying to destroy you, which goes against everything that Spider-Man was about, which obviously he had to get that venom, which ended up turning into venom, had to get that out of there. But what does a superhero have that we have? And, you look at some things when you talk about, especially as, young men are coming up and they're trying to find their way, because obviously that's something that they focus a lot on. It's like, what's your purpose? What are you trying to do with your life? And I think that, as you mentioned earlier, Doc, is the number one thing that a superhero does is serve.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's the main thing a superhero does. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I just want to take care of the neighborhood. I want bad people out, and I want people to be able to thrive and do their thing. So I am going to be available when trouble arises, and I need to make sure that the community is safe. I'm going to work with law enforcement and make sure things are safe. Batman obviously was the same way, and Gotham is just I will make it represent what Gotham represents in current cities today. I will save that because you may have family communities. But, just the idea that it's just crime ridden. You got, this maniacal Joker who, just wants to see the world burn, and that's the adversary. And then there's kind of the duality between the two of those. But, Batman's there to serve Gotham, right? And make sure that Gotham is safe. Even has the little projector out there that says, hey, we need you. It's like, okay, cool. For Spider-Man, yes, the bat signal. For Spider-Man, the hair on his arm used to just, go crazy off the back of his neck. It's like, the Spidey sense, we're ready. And what is Spidey sense for us, right? It's when we're talking to someone and we know that there's something burdening them. We can sense that something isn't right. And you say, hey, Janet, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm good. And it's just like, no. Let's talk about it. I know there's something, because you have a sense. You have the empathetic feel that knowing that something is not right with them, and you're there for them in that spot. So I think this service, not only from a mental standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, right? What are we taught to do? To look out for those who are vulnerable whom we can serve. Why do you think we do? What is community service? Community service is doing for those who are less fortunate than yourself. And when you do those kind of things, it's the idea that, like, I'm blessed enough. I've been blessed so much that I need to make sure and give to others. In fact, I wouldn't be blessed in the way I am if I did not serve the needs of others. And I think people get that mistaken. I hear people sometimes in my line of work who say, when I get more, I'll give more. And I say, never get more if you don't give.
Right.
See how and there's biblical stories that point to that as well. When you give, your percentage, whether it's 10, 12, 20%, that's your choice of where you want to go with that. However, but when you get to the point where the best and first of who you are, you give, right? The best and first you give unto others. And then you receive after you have taken care of those things. It's not I get more, I give more. You can't be blessed until you're grateful for where you are, right where you stand. And superheroes typically represent that. Superheroes stop what they're doing to go take care of others. And so service, I think, is one of the main and primary things that superheroes do. And there's other things as well. But I know, Doc, that you want to keep the conversation flowing, and we will continue.
Well,
to do
I
that.
want to point out, Ahmad, you mentioned something given the first, and I never thought about that perspective because actually that is the opposite of what most of us do, me included. It's certainly the opposite, I think, of what even celebrity, quote, superheroes do. They don't give the first, they give the leftovers. And when they do give something, there's always something they're getting out of it. If you might wonder sometimes, why is this celebrity taking time to guest host on a show? It's probably to promote a new movie. It's probably to promote something. They're not doing it out of the goodness or kindness of their heart. When they make an appearance at some event or whatever, there's probably something to sell. And I remember a conversation in a spiritual setting one time where people were sharing their good deeds for the week, and it dawned on me that we're each getting something out of sharing our good deeds for the week, and that's we're getting attaboys, attagirls, and pats on the back. And I had a C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, once said, a supposal. My supposal was this, and it was not popular. My supposal was, why don't we do good deeds for the week and then tell no one? Dun, dun, dun. I mean, how about that? I mean, what a wake-up call that was for folks. Let's help somebody change a tire and then keep it a secret.
Right.
I mean,
right.
if you want to talk scripture, there is a scripture there about, well, it's about prayer, and it says, don't do as the Pharisees and Sadducees do, standing on the street corners saying prayers to be seen and heard of people. Go into your closet where God is in secret and pray to God which is in secret, because a lot of prayers even are just showpieces to demonstrate my eloquence, and we'll use a lot of King James English, thee and thine and thou, as if God speaks in King James English, which is really kind of odd. No offense to those who do that, but that's I remember being in a college setting one time and the microphone wouldn't work, and there was a famous minister who was going to say the prayer, say the benediction over the meal, but the mic wouldn't work. Technomolology, as we call it. And they fiddle-faddled around with it until somebody spoke up, not me. I would have loved to have been the one that said this, until they said, hey, just say the freaking prayer. God can hear you. I mean, what God doesn't need your mic to, you're being heard of men and women, I mean, why does someone need to hear you? But I think that this also gets into some social psychology research by Bob Cialdini, Cialdini. He's famous for his social psychological research, and he's also the reason why you see pictures of whales and blue oceans when you stay in a hotel room. He's the one that came up with that. How do you get people to reuse their towels? Well, you tell them they're saving the whales. I mean, people got to see that they're giving back, that they're serving in some way. But his research kind of calls into question true altruism, that we as humans, to be altruistic, it's not ever pure because we're getting something out of it. And I think, Ahmad, what you're saying, and I very much agree with you, is fight. Don't let it be the scraps. If you're going to give yourself to someone sacrificially, give them the best of you. I mean, I hope I got that right. What do you think about that?
Something that was kind of coming to mind as we were talking too, was a lot of times, especially when I'm talking to people in therapy, I hear this a lot, and they're like, all I do is give and give and give and give, and I never get anything back from anybody. And I tend to stop them right there and kind of, we have a good discussion about, well, what is your intention in giving? If you're just doing it expecting to get the same in return, you're probably always going to be disappointed. Because, no, they're not you. That other person is not you. They're not thinking the same way that you're thinking. It's much better to go into it not expecting anything in return, and then you get kind of blessed by the whole situation overall, instead of going into it thinking, well, I helped them fix their tire today, so next time, my roof has a leak, they better come, or, me fixing their tire was a waste. And that's kind of a really sad perspective to have, in my opinion.
Bouncing off of that, I think too, people say, have the do unto others as you want them to do to you. Like, well, I treated someone nicely, but they treated me like a jerk. I did unto them. Why aren't they treating me the same way? It's kind of that same philosophy. You don't treat people nice just so that way you can get treated nice back. That should be, like a way of life. Like, treating people nice and showing them that you care, and just being there for them, being an example to them. And then, if you get some in return, that's great, but just being that example is what's important.
Right. And kind of going back to our superhero theme, when superheroes save somebody, they know that person could never do what they just did. Right. If you're not a superhero, you can't fly up and catch somebody who's falling off of a building. If you're not a superhero, you can't shoot webs out of your wrists and then, swing across and save somebody from a fire. They know that they're serving people, but that they can't really get the same thing back. It's just not possible.
Ahmad, in your sphere where you work and live with the people, what are some ways that people are being common day superheroes that you've seen?
Doc, just if I may, the talking points you just threw out to the group just sparked something in me. And you were talking about how, hey, I did something for someone and they didn't do something back for me. I remember when I had that attitude, and it was destructive. Like, hey, I'm doing all this for you. It's been some years. Like, hey, what's up on the return or whatever? And then I realized, I think it'd have been 2017. I went through an extremely rough family separation situation. And I remember I lost 65% of my income. And during that time before then, I was on top of the world. I had a solid job making good money. I was working for Fox Sports. I was on TV every other week during the fall. I mean, it was like my second job was like a third of my primary job. So I was rolling in cash, and it was well. And of course, when you're bringing in big money, you're just like, and I had recently learned how to tithe properly. And so, yeah, it was like, I could pull aside all sorts of cash, right? But then you lose 65% of your income, and it's like, I had to have a real talk with myself, with God. I'm just like, hey, man, where we are right now. We're in and out of different houses. We don't have anything. Nothing is secure right now. I was displaced from my home, living in and out of, garbage hotels here and there. I was, paying by the night, paying by the week. And it just was, mind you, I don't have the funds for this. But I remember I said, okay, if there's any time I should trust, this right now. And I remember staying true to my tithing. Every month I would be on the brink of like straight up like broke poverty. It'd be like $8 and some change left in my account because the first thing I would do is pay my tithes. And I'm looking at the numbers from the expenses, and I'm like, ooh, can I still afford to tithe? And I say, you know what? I can't afford not to tithe. And I just remember, as you were talking about doing for others or whatever, I had made a deal with myself, with God. And I said, you know what? I don't know how to get through this. I said, but I'm going to use whatever you've done to bless me with to be able to go out here and do what needs to be done. And I remember that year, I made deals with people because I'm obviously a keynote speaker. And I would make a deal with them and say, look, I'm going to come speak to your organization for no cost to you. Only thing I ask is that you take care of my travel fees for me to get there, and you allow me to record it, and you give me 3 referrals of who you can assign me to do the same deal I'm doing with you.
Wow.
Doc, that was the greatest year I'd ever had. I did 22 speaking engagements that year.
Oh, wow.
Which was the most at that time. And I remember what ended up happening is I was going to do these events and tithing the entire thing to, tithing it to the organization. And I would leave and they would have a love offering and give me money. They would connect me with people in the community and say, hey, this guy's a pretty good guy. Why don't you bring him back? I remember, and I'll bring this story to a close. I remember going to an event and I was just like, hey, just take care of my travel expenses, but make sure, because for every place I go and speak, when I'm in the town, the deal is that you have to find me a community service project to do while I'm in that town or city. That's a requirement of mine. I have to give back. I have to tithe my time while I'm there. If you pay me to come out there, then I have to tithe my time while I'm there. When I went there, this school could not find me anything. It was like at the end of summer. There was I was like, you can't find me a church, a community center. You can't find a park with a bunch of kids. You can't find anything for me? No. And he was like, no. And he brought me into the office. He's like, man, I've called every church. I've called everywhere and no one has anything. And I was just like, man, I'm really disappointed. He said, I don't have an event that I can get you for free while you're down here. He said, but I do have a conference coming up later this fall and we'll pay you $2,000 to come speak at that.
Wow.
Interesting how that works. Mm-hmm. I went leading with service. I'm trying to give back, and I was blessed with the funds. And of course, I strongly told him, I said, when you bring me back, you will have a community service project for me for this. You absolutely will. Do not play with this. And so I ended up doing a free session with the athletes on campus. I did a chalk talk with them before I did the leadership session the next day. But that's where Sarah was talking about is absolutely correct. If you're looking for, because if we're gonna go by the word already tells you that no matter what, the return is coming. Mm-hmm. But it's not about the return.
Right.
The blessing is the act of doing, right? It's the act of doing. The return is just like, is it the icing on the cake or is it the candles or is it the plate? Who knows? But it's not right. The number one thing. Remember, give and it will be given unto you. That's not our opinion. That is the law. So you just do the doing. Stop asking questions about where it's coming from. Because you all know, I guarantee you, everyone sitting at in this circle right now, has the blessing you received, has it ever come from the person you actually gave a blessing to? I'll wait. Oh. Rarely does it come from the source of who you gave the blessing to. So once you know that and your heart is on the service and the gratitude first, life just naturally comes around and gives you all that you need and then some.
I agree. I think that you sow the seed and then the harvest doesn't come from that seed. It comes from another source. Mm-hmm. And if you're always sitting around like many people do in companies as employees, when are they going to give me my bonus? When are they going to do this for me? When are they going to give me a back rub, a foot rub? When are they going to give me a pat on the back? Instead of just serving, then it's going to lead to a lot more discovery of value and meaning. One of the main problems I see in relationships is the either, what have you done for me lately? Kind of the Wall Street ROI mindset. Yes. Mm-hmm. This relationship may be an investment, but I do expect to get something from it. And if I don't get a quick, early, substantial return on investment, I'm going to withdraw my investment. The divorce courts are full. They can't take any more business. I mean, they're bursting at the seams. Or people will have what I call the Burger King philosophy of life. Have it your way. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, look, in relationships specifically, in life generally, you can have the relationship or you can have it your way, but not both. In life, you can have a healthy life or have it your way, but not both. You have to choose. And I believe that choice would be living as a superhero, which is sacrificially. Some of the greatest, I think, I mean, goodness, we just got out of Avengers 2, Endgame. Mm. And it's not for nothing, as they say up in Boston, New York, it's not for nothing that what they do to Iron Man, bless his heart, they freaking, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, turn us off. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good.
Turn
Doc.
off the episode, watch the movie, come back to the episode. All right, we're good to go. Everybody knows how it ended. Yes. You don't know, he dies at the end. And why did they do that? Because we'll get to later in the show, what is the greatest attribute of a superhero? But at the end, what's Iron Man do? Well, he gives his life. He gave his last breath. Everything after that point was for him doable, and we'll talk more about doable later at the end of the episode. Ahmad, what are some real life attributes of superheroes in the everyday walk of life, even if it's pro athletics, that you've run into?
I'll cap off where you left off right there when you said that Iron Man gave his life, and then there's a death that happened. When you give at a certain level, you all are in psychology, you work in marriages, you work in families or whatever. There's in biblical as well, there's a death that must happen to be able to bring a whole group together. You have to die off from bad habits. You have to die off from things that are not constructive, that are going to be destructive to the family. That old you. Remember, if we're going to acquire new things, it's going to require a new mindset, which means the old one needs to go, right? It needs to be eradicated. And what the death of Tony at the end of Endgame was very important, because it was, of course, I don't know where Marvel's going now, but it was the end of that era, which was a great era of superheroes. Of course, this next one, I will not speak on it right now until I see something that actually wants to bring my attention to it. But the metaphor of Tony dying off for the good of everyone. Remember, Dr. Strange said 14,200,000, only one.
Oh, yes.
And he said, tell me this is it. He said, if I tell you what's supposed to happen, it won't happen. Meaning, if I tell you that you're going to have to give your life for this, it may not happen. So we just got to let it go the way it's supposed to go.
Oh man, I get chills even hearing you say that.
because think about it, husbands or wives, is there not some part of you that needs to die off for the family to be able to do what it needs to do? Right? For the fact of resources to be available, for the fact of, we need to pick up the kids at 3 and at 5, but our schedules don't allow. Okay, something needs to give. Something needs to be given up. Something needs to die off in order for this family to function effectively. And with that, Doc, it leads into the other side. What are attributes of a superhero? A superhero, most of them, if not all of them, are leaders.
Yes.
They are leaders. They don't wait. That when they are called, it's like, hey, Commissioner Gordon, he calls him up and say, Batman, I really wish I could be there. I got a meeting at 6, but when that's over, I'll come take care of the crime. Just tell the bad guys to hold off for a second. I'll be there and take care of it. No, they're leaders. They go in before the cops do. They're ready and willing to give at that level. We're talking, it's leader. It's all time back into service, right? What is something that's taught in many professions? Servant leadership, giving of yourself for what? For the good of the group, for the good of the city, for the good of your family, for the good of a sports team, for the good of a university, for the good of an organization. Who is willing to give and lead, right? Who's willing to go in and take the arrows first? Who's willing to be on the front line, right? Who's willing to give that to make sure this ship operates properly? Superheroes do that, right? They do that. Quarterbacks do it. Head coaches do it. GMs do it. We all do that. It starts with leadership. It starts with service, but then there's a leadership component to it as well. And
Now,
that's what
Ahmad,
you see out of God.
not being as educated in football as you are, I do have a question about that. From your experience with football, do you see that leadership position as stagnant, is staying in the same spot with the same person across time, across games, across seasons, or do you see different people rising to the occasion?
Welcome to Social Media Smackdown. Tonight, the irresistible force meets the illogical object. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to reason!
There's lots of great stuff on the internet put out, even in social media, by influencers. I love Corey Muscara. Who doesn't love Corey Muscara? He was a monk and now he's teaching us all the secret knowledge about living the monk's life and meditation and all that. But even big influencers need to be steered back on course, and we're here to, in a polite, courteous way, call out Corey Muscara, because a recent post I got says, a reason you may experience anxiety. My ears perk up because we do this for a living. But the contribution was, you have a big energy system that feels, you know what we here at the Art Lab think about the F word. It's a 4-letter word, starts with F, feel, because it feels stifled by your environment. That's not a feeling, that's a belief. And the post says energy plus containment equals anxiety. Well, I'm very sorry, but that would go against the entire bulk of cognitive psychology. Emotions, anxiety is an emotion. Over here, emotion, hope I'm going the right way for you, is way over here in the C box. This is the consequence. Emotions are a consequence, but what are they a consequence of? Well, over here is the A box, antecedent, an event, situation, circumstance. But it can't be that the emotion is caused by an event, situation, circumstance, or everyone exposed to that event, situation, circumstance would have to have that emotion. Therefore, what's the difference? Well, my friends, my fellow T-ballers, the difference is the middle of the pie, the middle of this cognitive sandwich, and that is your belief system. What you and I decide to think about an event, situation, circumstance is what creates the emotion. It's not just big energy. It's not just some type of containment. I'm not really sure what that means. Pardon the expression, but I'm kind of averse to psychobabble. What we decide to think creates our anxiety. If you're experiencing anxiety, what are you deciding to think? If you're experiencing anger, what are you deciding to think that manufactures that anger? If you're experiencing sadness or depression, what are you deciding to think that manufactures that sadness or depression? The manufacturing plant for emotion is right here inside the vault of your skull, and it's not about some emotion being manufactured out of the ether. It is manufactured in the very synapses, the connections between brain cells inside the vault of your skull. If you want to feel differently, change your thinking.
What a slobber knocker! The winner by Psychological Smackdown, Doug Heath! No pronouns were harmed during the production of this podcast.
You're listening to Therapy Bites Art Lab, bite-sized therapy for your brain with Dr. Heath and the T-Ball team. The best advice on the net. No copay required.
Welcome to the Therapy Bites Art Lab Library, where we have poured over thousands of volumes to bring you the latest Couch Crumbs quote. Oh, would you like a napkin? You're getting crumbs in the book.
That okay. Me eat book.
Oh. And now today's Couch Crumbs quote.
Hey everyone, it's time for today's Couch Crumb quote. My name is Debbie, and our quote today is from Eric Erickson, and it says, "Life doesn't make sense without interdependence. We need each other, and the sooner we learn that, the better for us all."
Here's Heath and the T-Ball team.
That's a great question, Doc. And I think that where we are now, and you all are in the business of this, there is a major power vacuum going on right now. There is a leadership. It's a lot of leadership that is not being fulfilled, and some of the leadership that is being fulfilled is being masked as leadership when it's actually it's very nefarious. Because unfortunately, somewhere between the 70s and current, once the breakdown of the family happened, leadership left the building, and now you have lack of leadership teaching more lack of leadership that's based on the fact of a lack of accountability, a lack of discipline, and things of that nature. That's why when you see leaders now, you're just like, man, he came or she came from a place where like now they had to overcome a lot to be able to learn that level of leadership. And so there is some leadership still out there. It's just not what it was from years before, because no one wants to be the guy who says, you know what, that's on me. You know, there's some guys out there who still represent that. But
yeah, you know, there's a story about that from one of our U.S. presidents. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt who coined the term. I think it was Teddy. The buck stops with me, and the buck was talking about a buck knife, and that'd be passed around to the person dealing the cards. The one dealing the cards had the buck knife, so that everybody knew who was dealing the cards. And the buck stops with me means I'm taking responsibility for dealing the cards. And you're right. I agree. That is sorely lacking. And I think I mentioned this in another podcast episode. There's a book. I've not read it, but I do love the title. Mistakes were made, but not by me. You know, everybody seems to want to hold the reins and get the glory, but they don't want to take the blame or take the responsibility. It's not about blame, but take responsibility when things kind of go downhill. And you're right. That's the biggest part of leadership is responsibility taking. Responsibility, the ability to respond.
That actually reminds me of a song, and I can't remember who wrote the song, but the song is called Undone. Do you remember who wrote Undone?
Oh, was it FFH?
I think it was FFH,
Yeah.
but in the song it says,
love that song.
we all want love, we all want honor, but nobody wants to pay the asking price.
Yes, I love that.
And, you know, it comes with an asking price, because being in leadership does mean that you are under more scrutiny and your mistakes are going to be brought up, but it really shows who you are when you tell people that, you know what, I did make that mistake, and here's what I'm doing to remedy it, and whatever the consequences are, I'm ready to face them.
I agree. Part of leadership is owning mistakes and missteps. And if we understand reality properly, and that is that we can find meaning and value in everything, including missteps and mistakes, then that must mean something to twist all our noodles in the future. That must mean that there's no such things as mistakes. That's called, some people call it failing forward. Failing forward. Never waste a hurt, never waste a mistake, never waste a failure by not learning something from it. What about the leadership question? Do you see on the football field the leadership? I mean, as a non-expert in football, it always seems, is it the quarterback who's kind of always the leader on the field, or sometimes is it another player?
It should be. Typically, quarterbacks are going to be natural leaders, because it's kind of like Who gets to blame when the team doesn't perform? It's usually coach and quarterback. That's just sort of the natural progression of how things go. But it's interesting, as you all were talking about the song "Undone" or whatever. I have a principle that I use. I've used it in 2 books now. It's called "It's Not Your Fault, but It Is Your Problem." Right.
Cool.
And I use the example from when back in the day, and some of you in the room may be old enough to remember when you had to put your trash out on the side of the curb, and the garbage man would come by and actually have to jump off the truck and get it. It wasn't that big arm that just drops it in there or whatever. It was somebody had to physically come out and get that. Well, you knew that if you put your trash out too early, that there would be some very scavenger type animals that would show up, whether it's stray dogs, whether it's raccoons or whatever. And so I remember my father used to go get the big sturdy trash cans, and we would put our trash inside of the can, and then the garbage man would just pick the can up and dump it in. Well, some of our neighbors weren't so courteous with that. They would put those cheap bags out, and of course the dogs would ravage through it. Well, there was mornings I would wake up and our yard would be covered in trash. And you're just like, well, this isn't cool. And think about it. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. Because that's your yard.
Yep, that's
It's
right.
your yard. You are responsible for the beautification of your yard. Your neighbor wasn't so courteous and doesn't have to pay the price for a mistake that you didn't make. You put your stuff in cans. The dogs didn't ravage through your trash, but someone else's trash that got drug into your yard. So I used to tell my father, it's not fair that I got to go pick this up. And he's like, this is our yard. We're responsible for our yard. We didn't cause the problem, but we need to clean up the mess. And that is a core component of leadership. How many times do you see CEOs having to apologize for things that maybe they didn't know happened until it happens? They have to own up to something that, like, wait a minute, this happened in the mailroom. Like, I have 4 managers behind me taking care of that. But because you hired all of those people, or even if you didn't hire all those people, you are in a position to where you're in charge of the entire company, right? That's why you have PR departments to deal with those types of things. But you have to be the one to say, I will take responsibility for none other reason that I run this organization and I didn't know that was going on under my watch. I had no clue about it, yet I should have. And you take responsibility for things you don't even know what the full story is yet, but you still need to own the problem. And I deal with that a lot, and I'm sure you all deal with it in the clinical work all the time. Like, I deal with young men who are just like, he's like, you don't understand, Vital, man. My mom's on crack, my dad's in jail, I have no shot. And I'm like, that's not your fault, but it is your problem. Awesome. And whereas you have empathy for them. But at the end of the day, it's like, I want you to find a way to use that as the fuel to become everything you weren't, everything your upbringing was not. Because that is the true meaning of overcoming. And yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I do know it's possible and probable that you can make something out of this. Yes, I feel for you having to deal with all these cards being dealt against you, but this is the cards you were dealt, right? I would have loved to be born 6'2". I may not be sitting in front of you all doing what I'm doing. If I would have been, I would ended up being 6'2".
Oh my goodness, you're not? That's kind of a requirement for being on the show.
Sorry, I topped out at 5'9", and I'm working with the best I have. But you know what? The NBA just didn't call me.
Yeah.
I just didn't have it. I just didn't have it, man. I didn't have it. But I was dealt these cards. You can't change your height.
That's right.
You can't change your race. You can't change your parents. Mm-hmm. You can't change your socioeconomics you were born into. You can't change the family structure. All you can do is say, okay, what do I have going on for me? It ain't a lot, but you know what? Let me see what cards I do have dealt. And let me get with some people who can help me get to a new place.
And maybe it's not a lot, but maybe it's enough. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot,
that's all you need.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's all you need. You need someone to be able to look through the cards you have and say, you know what, here's a chance, you know? And of course that goes into the whole, what we teach a lot is to make sure you have community around you, right? Life is not meant to be lived alone, you know? And when you have people around you who can encourage you, who can build you up, they can look at your cards and say, you know what, this is a pretty grim situation, but you know what, I see something there. And what I see is a fight in you. And if you have that fight and you connect with the right people, you correct with the right mentors, you correct with the right specialists like you all on the screen right here, then we can find a way to get a win out of this. You know, some of us got dealt worse cards than others. You hear some of these stories, I'm sure you get some people come in and you're just like, you know, Heather's heart just drops at the idea of hearing what some of these young boys and girls are dealing with. And you're just like, man, I don't know if I'd have been able to make it through that. But it's for that reason that you all get together and put your heads together and figure out, let's find a plan for this young girl right here, for this young guy over here. Let's find a way to be able to help them not only believe in themselves, but be able to find a win in life with what they have going on with right where they stand. Because we're not created equal in that sense. And that's okay. That's what makes life beautiful. That's why people put people in each other's lives to be able to say, hey, you have a gift, Doc. Sarah, you have a gift. Let's put all those together and let's create something new in the patients we come and we see on a weekly or a monthly basis. That's what makes life so awesome. And that's what we see, whether it's in sports, psychology, or anywhere in life. That's what we need more of.
I think that's a great point. I think that we're each born, and this is using Stephen Covey's, some of his philosophy, which I'm sure he borrowed from other people. He wrote a book called 7 Habits Highly Effective People. I used to be a Covey trainer, flying across the nation training this. But I think we're born into a circle of influence, and we all have a wider circle of concern. We want to be 6'2". We want to be in the NBA or the NFL or a Fortune 500 running, owning, you know, operating a company, whatever. We want to have some type of a profession. But we're born into a circle, a very small donut hole of influence, but we get distracted by the circle of concern. And what Covey taught is the more we focus on our circle of influence, the more it grows and can eclipse our circle of concern. The more we focus on and are distracted by our circle of concern, the more our circle of influence shrinks. And I think the best thing that we can start influencing is ourselves. I agree with you. We didn't have control of the situation we're born into, the height that we're maybe genetically made to be, our skin color, our other cultural factors, the supporters that surround us and the supporters that don't. But a point I wanted to make there is it's not quite build a life and your supporters will appear. It's not build your life and supporters will appear. It is often, most often, you got to go get them. If you want a supporter, go find them. Go develop them. Go nurture supporters. Go ask for supporters. Put yourself in front of people that could be supporters. Don't wait on those people to come and knock on your door. Hey, I'm just here to support you. We heard that you needed one. That's not going to happen. Well, I think we have to search those people down. But the other thing I think is finding yourself and teaching yourself to be a superhero by sacrificing. I'll ask men we men love to think of ourselves as superheroes. Superheroes to our families and our spouses and our kids. But I think we misunderstand what that is. And to put some shoe leather on it, I'll ask guys, imagine you're sitting at home with your lovely spouse and someone kicks your door in. It's a home invasion. What are you going to do? Throw your wife in front of them? Hey, take her, you know? Who is it? Benny Youngman, or him, what was his name? Here, take my wife, please. Are you going to do that with a home invader? Or are you going to jump in front of the bullet? Now, a lot of guys would jump in front of the bullet, but guess what? That's kind of the easy thing. In the spur of the moment, playing superhero there, that's the easy thing. Here's the hard thing. The hard thing is changing as husbands our Burger King mentality of have it your way. That's the superheroic thing in my line of work in psychology, is teaching husbands you don't have to have this conversation go your preferred way. You don't have to have the boat that you want if it's costly for the relationship, the hunting trip you want, the night at the bar with friends. If you want to be a superhero, skip the night at the bar with friends and stay your butt home with your wife. That's, in my opinion, superheroic. Not jump in front of the bullet. I mean, home invasions occur. One is too many, but what are the chances? Most anybody can do that. I mean, what guy's going to run away and say, hey, take her, take her first? The superhero thing is in the most ordinary of things. What are some ordinary things that you see some of the young men you're working with succeeding at, Ahmad?
I like the direction you just went with that, and I think if I can kind of see it take a step back and look at what it looks like is that to be a superhero is to be more proactive, right? To be ahead of it. Like you said, in the moment you jump in and stop the bullet. Proactive in protection would be, hey, we got not only do we have a force field from a security standpoint around here, but just making sure that you live in a blessed house to put in, having the resources to live in a neighborhood where there's security guards and surveillance and different things around to where you putting your family in the best possible secure situation that you can be part of. And I think that's a level of protection, which it's interesting that you went to the protection part, because that was actually the third layer of what we're talking about here with superheroes. First is service, then is leadership, and the last is protection. And you protect what matters most to you. And obviously for a husband, it would be wife and family. That's the first thing. What else do superheroes protect? Your community. You can protect your institutions, what you hold dear to you. You also protect, the most important thing is your heart and mind. Right? Sound mind, sound judgment. Get putting yourself in position to where you talked about going out, and turning up with the guys. If you're turning up with the guys, I'm not saying that you can't control yourself, but you turn up too much and now you're not making sound judgment because you have some spirits in you in the liquid form that clog your judgment and force you to make bad decisions sometimes, and force you into some legal troubles if you get pulled over.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right.
So you talk about protection of the family. You give your life for that, right? That's a beautiful thing. You protect the property. You protect your investments. You protect the sanctity of your children. You protect them from the standpoint of not allowing them to be part of any organization that's going to corrupt their mind into thinking evil thoughts and thinking destructively about themselves, their mind, their body, their souls, right? So I think that protection is going to be a key element to this as well, in regards to what you were talking about being, husbands protecting on a much deeper level than just brute strength. It goes beyond that. The battle's always fought in the mind. You all know that better than me and anyone on this panel, and you see that. And you see that in the sports world, you see that in the business world, and you see that everywhere.
And Ahmad, what I run into in couples therapy, relationship therapy most often is, guess who it is that we men most need to protect our families from? It's not home invaders. It's not space invaders. It is ourselves. Being a superhero as a man means protecting my family from myself. And what does that mean? There are things that I might want to say that I need to protect my family from. I do not need to give myself permission to say things which may not be in the best care and interest and best health of my family. I need to protect them from words that I would say. I need to protect them sometimes from my behaviors. And I'm not talking about emotions here. People get that wrong about anger. Anger is not a behavior. You can't. If I don't want you to, you'll never know if I'm angry. But people interpret behavior as angry, but that's not an emotion. That is a behavior. And if it's an unhealthy behavior, I need to protect my family from my behavior. I need to protect my family from things that I do that I should not. And I need to protect my family from things that I don't do, sins of omission. By the way, the word sin is an Archer term, means miss the mark. I'm not talking theology here. That is miss the mark. To sin means to shoot an arrow but miss the mark. And I need to protect my family from things that I don't do that I should do, like spend time with them. It is superheroic to me to actually maybe give up some work to make less money so that I could give my family more of myself. Men listening to this program, let me just tell you something. After 38 years of therapy, your family needs you more than they need your money. Imagine that. They need you fully present. Your greatest ability is your availability. Your greatest gift to them is your presence, and that is superhero. And Ahmad, what are something else you might want to share with us to wrap up the show today?
Just the idea that, every day is a blessing and an opportunity, right? You said the best, you said you don't know anything about sports, Doc, but you actually just said something we use in sports all the time. The best ability is availability. Who's not on the injury report? Who's able to play in the game and able to be there? So whether it's husbands, whether it's the quarterback, or whether it's the starting linebacker, the best ability is availability. And I like where you went with that from the standpoint of, let's just say we have to understand that life, just like, nature, comes in seasons. Maybe there's a season where dad does need to put in a little bit extra hours. And then you sit down as a family and say, all right, you all, we have a goal we're trying to do, whether it's get out of debt, whether it's save up for a vacation, whether it's we're looking to move, and maybe this is the time when we need to go bring more resources in. So, you talk to Junior, you talk to your little ones and say, hey, Daddy's going to be out a little bit longer. We have some things going on. But like you said, I think the transparency and letting them know, hey, this is going to be a season where, I'm still going to be here, but I may be an hour or two off here or there. And I think, Doc, you would agree that those kind of conversations are needed, and your family will understand if that's what this season is calling for. Would you say that that's a fair assessment of how to handle a situation?
I agree. I think the healthiest families I found are families where it's not a dictatorship, but a collaboration. Mm-hmm. Ditch the dictatorship and go for the collaborative model. Here's what we're looking at, family. Here's the goal. Here's the direction. What are your thoughts on that? We can't have everything. If we're going to do this, we got to give this up. And make some informed decisions that way.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Collaborate.
I completely agree. And just the transparency. Hey, here's what's on the table.
That's right.
This is what came up. The water heater busted. Man, see how much a water heater costs these days, by the way? Yes.
My goodness. It's crazy. It's crazy. Everything's more expensive. But, the other part of that is, in doing so, you're really training up the next generation about how to collaborate with their family. I mean, it does your kids no good if they can't practice real life with you before they confront real life. Mm-hmm. And water heaters going out, well, that's real life. How are they going to know to handle that if you keep that discussion from them? Let them eavesdrop on healthy discussions, because that teaches them how to be superheroes. Just a couple minutes, other thoughts before we take off for the day? Questions for Ahmad before we let him go? We really appreciated being here. Yes. We're going to have a Ahmad-centered special graphic created just for him and his fans and followers. You can get this off of the Therapy Bites shop. It'll be a show mug and a show shirt featuring Ahmad in his own special yoga pose. Yeah, we'll turn him into a pretzel yoga style or something like that, and put him in our standard Therapy Bites dress-up outfit of a blue shirt and green pants. There's the green pants and blue shirt.
Blue shirt and green
and
pants.
You'll notice that the shoelaces are untied. That's a little kind of double entendre for us, graphic speaking, because we just like to hang loose. Shoes untied, we like to hang loose here at the Art Lab. I'd like to wrap up, anything before I wrap up? I'm going to wrap up with a thought for the day, as if we've not had plenty, and there's been plenty of wisdom from Ahmard in this podcast today, and I really appreciate that. You guys put up some likes and follows and shares and saves on your favorite pod player. But think about what superheroes do. Superman can leap tall buildings in a single bound or fly over them, and he's mightier than a freight train, and he can stop bullets and all that kind of thing. Spider-Man can swing around on webs and has the equivalent ratio strength of a spider. This is easy for him. I mean, I've seen him strain at lifting heavy buildings in the comics, but his strength is just kind of old hat for him. The stuff that Thor can do. See, we look at all these superheroic acts, but these are things that we only view superheroic because it's hard for us but easy for them. Therefore, what is easy for them, the flying through the sky, the jumping over buildings, lifting buildings, swinging around through buildings, that's not heroic because it is easy for them. If you want to be heroic, superheroic, then choose the hard stuff. Do the difficult stuff. The easy stuff is not heroic. It's easy. It's old hat for you. I'm going to challenge you men listening and you young men listening. If you want to be a superhero, superheroes are at their most superheroic when they are choosing the hard things, not the easy things. Any dodo bird can do easy things. With your family, your friends, your relationships, your career, those of your loved ones, do the hard stuff and you will never more be than at your most superheroic.
That made me think of a quote that I've been kind of tossing around actually throughout this thing. It's from an anime that I watched, Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki said it. He said, "People called me a failure. I'll prove them wrong." And to me, watching that growing up, he was my hero because people always were down on him. They told him stuff he couldn't do, but he always challenged himself to rise above what they said, to always prove them wrong, that no matter how many times he was brought down, no matter how many times things got difficult, he always put in the work, put in the effort, and showed people that I can do this even though if you say you can't. And so to me, he was my superhero because it proved that no matter how many times I have a struggle in life or that other people have struggles in life, you can push past that and really, get stuff done that you need to.
Choose the hard thing. Overcome. Do the hard thing. You too can be a superhero. Ahmard, my brother, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here. It's been great stuff. Thank all of you folks for tuning into the podcast. Catch our next episodes, and we will be back before you know it. Drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day. Bye-bye all.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Hey, T-Ballers. Thanks so much for being with us today. If we brought value to your day, show us some love by leaving your positive feedback and inviting some friends to listen in and join the T-Ball team. Next time on Therapy Bites Art Lab.
We are so privileged to have Jack Brickhouse in the Art Lab today, and he's going to share with us all kinds of nuggets of wisdom about the psychology of self-development, how to be an entrepreneur of your own life. Coming up next.
Government legal gobbledygook. Therapy Bites is not intended as a diagnostic or as an alternative to professional clinical treatment. Resources and advice are for information and entertainment purposes only. Brought to you by someone saying things you don't like? Tape that nagging loudmouth shut. Government-approved speech tape. Gas tape. Now available at your local hardware store. Therapy Bites Art Lab is not an approved, endorsed, authorized, butt-kissing affiliate of the United States Special Offense Assessment Police. SOAP for short. Warning. consumption of Therapy Bites Art Lab content by Kool-Aid drinking, stinking, thinking, social media, pseudo-psychological pushing, wacky woke, anti-free speech, mumbo-jumbo advocates may cause spontaneous internal skull combustion, stomach discomfort, and or laxative effects. Allergy warning. Therapy Bites is manufactured in a facility that challenges nutty distortions, processes nuggets of accurate, realistic thinking, and life-affirming beliefs. This is the audio version of the legal fine print. Why are you still listening to this when you can catch the next great episode of Therapy Bites Art Lab with a good friend or family member? Really? Are you still there? This is getting silly. Move on to the next psychologically thrilling episode of the best advice on the net. No copay required.
Me eat copay.
Yeah, with Dr. Heath and the T-Ball team. Go ahead, don't be podgoraphobic. Scoot, scoot, scoot. On to the next episode.